Hello and welcome to the Successful Open Relationships and Polyamory Summit. This is Sumati Sparks, your host, and you can find me at sumatisparks.com. And I'm really excited to have as my guest today, Allie Ash. As a sociologist with a PhD from Stanford, Dr. Ash has a comprehensive understanding of the complex societal challenges that often lead to unsatisfying and disempowering sexual and relational experiences. A champion for others overcoming shame and deepening pleasure, Dr. Ash helps her clients radically explore and courageously express themselves. She designs workshops and offers individuals and couples coaching to give them the tools to discover their desires and confidently pursue them. Welcome to the summit, Allie.
Thank you so much. It's good to be here.
So glad to have you. Yes, I was reading your bio and thinking about radically explore and express themselves, and remembering your performance of your spoken word piece at a festival, and just it was so powerful. And I told you, like, you don't have to do any more workshops or write any books, just for that. It was just so everything. So congratulations on just the way that you express yourself and you really walk your talk.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So that's a very provocative bio at the end, where it says you help people discover their desires and confidently pursue them. So a lot of times we don't even know what we want. And then to get to the point where you can actually confidently pursue them, how do you do that?
It takes radical self-exploration, like really spending the time to sit with yourself, to explore your emotions, to explore your pleasure, right? So to know yourself, right? And then this determination to allow yourself to be seen, to be vulnerable, and to expose all the little bits about you, including what you want and maybe what you're afraid of that gets in your way of having what you want.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. So what would be like the pathway to, what skills do people need to develop to get good at discovering their desires and then expressing them?
Well, I mean, I think one of the skills that I definitely want to talk with you about more today is negotiation. Mm-hmm. To be able to know what it is that you want, to be able to understand where and how you're open to compromising, and to be able to engage in thoughtful discussion that is explorative, that prioritizes curiosity and being open-minded, and really wanting to get to all of the emotional and logical reasons behind the various stances that we take around both our desires and our fears.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why I love the world of relationships, because it's just this never-ending, constantly morphing kind of animal where, you know, we may feel one way and then 5 minutes later we feel another way. So there's just like kind of constantly a need for the skills of negotiation, communication. I remember meeting a new man recently who knew that I had a lot of experience in polyamory, and he said, "You must be really good at sex." And I was like, it's not like a skill that you just impose on every person that you meet. It's not like the same routine. It's about meeting someone where they are and finding the unique first time ever dance between two human beings that's always changing. So let's break down negotiation a little bit. And maybe we can start, since this is a summit about open relationships and polyamory, what are the kinds of things that non-monogamous people need to negotiate?
I mean, I think you have the whole set of things that monogamous people want to negotiate around, right? So that could range from the kind of sexual intimacy to engage in, agreements around how to keep a home, agreements around dating and communication styles and frequency of communication. And then there's all of these additional aspects of dating and relationships that apply to non-monogamous folks, including things like navigating safer sex practices and what to do when a risk of exposure happens. How to navigate new interests, new love interests that are coming into a relationship dynamic. social protocols. So how do we function when we're in different types of community settings? Maybe even who are we out to around our non-monogamous practices, and who do we keep that private from? As we know that can impact people's work experiences, even childcare and custody issues, right? It's just so, there's so many complex and sometimes really unfortunate with regards to those examples, complications of living in a non-monogamous lifestyle. And at the same time, I have to say, I think one of the things that's so empowering about being non-monogamous is it requires us, we cannot make do with whatever kind of relationship negotiation skills we might have picked up along the way. I think to really have successful, healthy, non-monogamous partnership, we need to get good on our communication skills and our ability to negotiate. And so I appreciate the incentive it creates.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, if somebody says you must be really good at sex, the answer is, well, I'm really good at communication.
Right. Yeah. And probably something around, and I'm explorative and open-minded. Or maybe I've been exposed to a lot of different people's desires and wants, and I can use that perspective to help to create safety. I mean, I really think that those are some of the powerful advantages.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. So I want to dig a little bit more into the safety issue in a minute, but before I forget, when you were talking about some of the things that non-monogamous people need to negotiate, one of them you said was how out we're going to be to the community. And it reminded me of a client that I was working with recently who the third, there was in a pre-existing long-term relationship, and then a third came in, and the one person in the long-term relationship wants to keep it very discreet, and the third is feeling constrained in her ability to feel expressed in the world around loving this person. Mm-hmm. So what kind of tips can you give people in that situation where one person wants discretion and the other wants to shout from the rooftops their love for somebody?
Yeah. I think the first thing is to start with some empathy. Really build deep compassion and understanding for the other person's experience. So what is it that the person who doesn't want to be out is afraid of? And what are some of the social costs or other kinds of factors that they're considering as problematic in this idea of being more out? Perhaps they have family members that are really conservative, or a boss or a place of work that's really conservative, or maybe there's insecurity there around not wanting to feel like her partnership with the original set is devalued by other people in their community, right? So there's 1,001 things that could be behind that fear. And so what I would do is recommend exploring all of that, making a space for all of that to be welcome, realizing that emotions aren't always logical. And so not to question how rational something is, but to really just be able to create a space where we can, peel back the layers of the onion to see what are all of the tender bits that are being triggered or pinged upon. And then the same thing for the person that wants to be more out, that doesn't have that opportunity or feel that sense of freedom. How is this person feeling maybe disregarded or not important or silenced? What are their core values? Maybe they really have values around transparency and authenticity that are coming into tension with the needs of her partner or their partner. So starting as like putting on your scientist hat and just gather data in a way that's just really open-minded, because I will say that no matter what kind of compromise or agreement these three people come to, they're going to have more buy-in to that agreement and more willingness to compromise and create space of safety if they can connect first emotionally.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. And that's a good segue to the issue of safety. So there's kind of a meme that monogamy is safer and more secure, and polyamory is less safe and secure. So can you speak to that, whether that's true or not? And either way, like, how do we help our partners feel a sense of security and safety in non-monogamous relationships?
Yeah. I mean, safety is an issue in every relationship, right? We all want to feel safe, and for various reasons, with various collective histories of wounding and trauma and attachment issues, right? Relationships can be scary places. And that's true in monogamy and non-monogamy. And I think that one of the things that I really help my clients with is learning how to figure out what would have them feel safer in any given relationship. How can they ask their partner or partners for reassurance? I often recommend that clients create kind of like a manual for themselves that they can give to their partner or partners that just tells them, like, these are the things I'm really sensitive around. When I'm feeling upset in this way, this is actually really what I need to hear. Or, you know, this is something that I would really like a lot of communication around. And the best way to communicate with me around it is via email or in person or within a short amount of time, or give me some time after you bring it up before we actually have a conversation so I can sit with it. Right? I think each person has very individual differences around what makes us feel scared in relationships and what will have us feel safer. And so I think that it's everybody's job in relationship to share this information and to ask our partners and lovers for this information so that we can take care of one another. And I think oftentimes when we kind of front load this care and really create safety from the beginning, it can have a lot of our wounding and our fears settle so that we don't need so much reassurance as the relationship continues.
Beautiful. So do you literally suggest that people create a manual, like something in writing?
You know, I've had various clients take advantage of that offering in different ways. I think at a minimum, especially when you're dealing with something like jealousy, or if there's a trigger that shows up repeatedly in a relationship, that telling your partner what it is that you want to hear in those moments is going to be a game changer for both of you. And I remember when someone recommended this to me, I thought, it doesn't count if I tell them what I want to hear. Let me tell you, it still works. It totally works. And I think that we can be generous lovers not only by taking care of our partners and lovers, but by helping them take care of us. We want to feel like we are being able to show up for our partners in the way that they want. So let's help
Awesome.
them.
I was just thinking about a course I took recently with the prolific writer Susan Campbell, and she talks about relationship repair. So after your nervous system has calmed down, to come back and talk about what core wound got triggered in you, so your partner will know going forward that that's a soft spot. And that might be something that you write down at that time and to add to your manual.
Exactly right. And I mean, my manual is always growing and changing, right? We're not static beings. And I think that one of the reasons why hopefully each relationship feels like it's better than the one before is because we're learning more about ourselves, more about what we want and need, more about what we don't want to need. And we can take that knowledge with us into our future dynamic.
Yeah, and I like that it doesn't suppose that we are all, so evolved. And I think that's one of the pitfalls of non-monogamy, is that we often try to act more evolved than we really are. And we have shame about the places that we're still not as enlightened as we want to be. So I know you help people overcome shame. So can you speak to that issue of people wishing they weren't as jealous as they are, or being afraid to ask for others to slow down or whatever?
I think that when we think about shame, the first thing that's really important is to realize why we feel shame, right? We feel shame because we don't want to be ostracized or excluded, because evolutionarily, if like back when we were a tribal society, if we were kicked out of the tribe, we would die. I mean, human beings are interdependent. We cannot survive on our own. So it's hardwired into our DNA to be shame averse. And so we often hide the things that we feel shame about, but Brene Brown says that shame festers in the darkness. And the best way to move through shame is to bring it into the light. And I think that one of the reasons why intimacy is vulnerable is because vulnerability is allowing somebody to really see who you are. All of the bits, including the bits that you might feel shame around. And the most corrective experience we can have is to have someone love us in a space of feeling shame. right? So to be selective around who you share your shame with, but to share it with people who you think are going to be able to hold you in light and love and with generous compassion, so that we can start to bring all of those parts into the fold, right? And I know that for me, some of the most profound work that I've been doing in my life is to look at the parts of myself, of the way that I show up, that I have felt shamed, and learn to move into a place of accepting it, owning it, getting to talk about it. You know, I have been an anxious attacher for most of my life. I'm working really hard to have more secure attachment in my relationships, and I'm making quite a lot of progress. And yet, at my core, I am an anxious attacher. And so I need certain kinds of reassurance and care and awareness around that in my relationships. And I'm not going to get that if I don't speak to it and ask for it. Otherwise, it might just be happenstance that actually is something that I'm needing, right? Like if we own what we want, we own our vulnerable bits, and if we ask for what we need around it, we are going to encounter more no's, but we're going to encounter so many more yeses, because it's not just up to chance that it happens for you.
And the right kind of yeses, because you don't want a reluctant yes anyway, right?
That's right. That's right. And part of that goes down to this like sense of self-worth. I know who I am, and I want somebody that wants me for who I am. And I'm not going to try and hide who I am and hope that I can get them to fall in love with me and then reveal these parts I've been hiding and hope they stay in love with me, that I've somehow trapped them. That you need to trap someone, right? That you just get to be who you are, and that that's lovable, and that you're going to front load that effort of creating a filter in the beginning by being vulnerable and sharing who you are, so that you're finding the right people who like what it is that you're offering.
Yeah, and finding the right people is a topic that keeps coming up with the other experts I've interviewed so far. And there's a fine line, and you talked about risking being vulnerable with the right people. So I know, like when I was younger, and if somebody said, you know, you have to choose the right partners, I would have gone, huh? Like it's taken a lifetime to be able to be discerning and to trust that I don't have to settle for anybody that's not going to improve my life. So do you have any tips for people to get there quicker than it took me to get there?
I mean, I think that part of it is realizing what your non-negotiables are. Like, what are the things that you're just not willing to compromise on? Doing a really thorough inventory of your past relationships. What worked really well for you? What didn't work well for you? And also realizing that all of your needs aren't going to get met in any relationship, and learning how to be with the disappointment of that and create intimacy through sharing disappointment, not being so averse to being disappointed or disappointing someone else that we overcompromise or accommodate or endure past our breaking points, right? So strengthening some relational skills that allow us to be with the disappointment of knowing that no relationship is going to meet every need, while still doing the work to figure out what are the needs that you're not willing to sacrifice on, and what compromises are you willing to make.
And that's one of the great things about non-monogamy, is we don't have to expect one person to be that everything.
Yeah. And I also really love the fact that it allows my relationships to unfold however they're organically going to unfold, rather than having to kind of shoehorn them into a specific box or a specific set of needs. I can just see how this person is rising to meet me and what the relationship that's best for us is going to look like.
Excellent. So we started talking about negotiation skills. What are some of the pitfalls that non-monogamous people should watch out for as they hone their negotiation techniques?
I think it's important to consider, when are you negotiating, right? So you definitely want to negotiate often, early, and when there might not even be any big need, so that you can practice these skills in less risky situations. And it's also important not to negotiate when you're feeling triggered, when your activation level is too high. That could be you're in a fit of jealousy, or you're really angry and upset. That these aren't the times, you know, the part of your brain that's responsible for logic and reasoning and advanced language gets bypassed when you're in flight, fight, or freeze mode. You're just in the amygdala part of your brain that's responding to threat. And so to negotiate then is really just a big mistake, because you're not going to be able to have the level of creativity and clarity and rationality that you want when you're coming up with an agreement.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So your business and your website is called turnon.love.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just reading an article recently about turn on staying alive in long-term relationships, and how difficult that is for so many people. So what advice can you give people for staying turned on in long-term relationships?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say one thing is to realize that in long-term relationships, you're likely going to need longer escalation patterns and more varied escalation patterns, meaning going from no sexual intimacy to sex requires more effort the longer that you've been with someone and the older that we get. And so I would say building your repertoire, expanding all of the ways that you know to touch each other, to explore, to play, playing with different kinds of erotic energies, like maybe passion or romance or dominance, taking workshops and courses together where you're learning new sex and intimacy courses, where you're learning new ways of pleasuring each other or communicating, playing sex and intimacy games. So making it more fun again. Explorative games like the this or that game is one I like to do with a lot of clients, that basically allows partners to explore different kinds of touches and what they like, and discover new things that they either didn't know that they liked, or new things that they didn't know that their partner or lover likes.
Can you describe the this or that game a little better?
Sure, yeah. So there are three main variables that kind of affect how we touch someone beyond just different types of touch. So if you think about different types of touch, right, you have like maybe scratching, or like a walking, or there could be like a stroking or massaging or a pinching, or, you know, it could keep going on, chopping, punching, right? So there's all these different ways that you can touch someone. You can vary each kind of touch on three parameters. Intensity, so how hard versus how soft. Pace, so how fast versus how slow. And location, and that both could be like where on the body, this will feel very different here than it would here, but also how much area you're covering. So this will feel very different than this. And so the way that it works is you offer your partner two kinds of touch, varying it only on one variable. So it's actually the same kind of touch varied on one variable. So you would say, do you like it like this? Or do you like it like that? So same intensity, same location, just varying the pace in this example. And your partner could say A, B, both, or neither. And then you move on and you would do that same kind of touch, and you could continue to titrate. So if they say that they like the faster better, then do the faster version and then do it even faster. And so you're kind of like really calibrating, at least on that given day, in that given place, how they want that touch. But what's so powerful about this is not only that you get to explore new ways of touching each other, you start to incorporate communication into your sexual experiences, because pretty soon the person's going to say, oh, I wonder what it would feel like if you did it like this. Or could you try twisting as you did it, right? So you start to get the receiver giving more input about what they want. And also it helps the receiver get out of their head, because in order to evaluate which touch they like better, they have to go into their body to assess the touch. So oftentimes we can get into our head, especially if we've been with somebody for a long time, and that can make it harder to have sexual intimacy. So learning these different tools of getting into your body to discover pleasure can be really useful.
Excellent. It's a very helpful, usable skill that people can take away from this. Also, I want to ask you about, I forgot what word you used, but you said something like more build up, more time to build into intimacy, sexuality with a long-term partner. So what are some of the ways that people can create a longer build-up, or how can they attend to that piece of it?
Sure. I would say, first of all, plan. Sometimes we just have to like bite the bullet and learn that we have to plan for intimacy. So schedule those sexy dates, and then think about how can you start to have the date before the date even starts. So maybe you're leaving like a sexy little note for someone, or sending a photo the day of, or maybe you're gonna pick them up, and as you're picking them up, you call them on the phone and you tell them how much you appreciate and love them if you want more romance, or maybe what you want to do to them later when you get home if you want more dirty talk, right? But you're just starting to think about, like, how can you start to get really a little bit more broad in the scope of how we're creating turn on, so that it's not just once the clothes are coming off. And then once the clothes come off, like, really to explore new ways of teasing, of creating anticipation, remembering that foreplay, which most people use to refer to oral sex, doesn't just have to come before penetrative sex, that you could have, you know, manual stimulation, oral sex, penetrative sex, go back to oral sex, go back to penetrative sex, try different positions, like just creating a lot of different variations so that it's not routine. And thinking about how you can have sex be a much longer experience by using all of these different things, so that you can even think maybe our sex is starting in the morning when I send that first dirty text.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
I think having additional partners added to a long-term relationship can bring that stimulation, that newness in.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that's really important that I work with a lot of my clients on is when you start to date somebody new and you have that flood of new relationship energy, right? You get all the oxytocin and dopamine, all those yummy love chemicals and hormones. To take that into your pre-existing relationships and have that feed your pre-existing relationships. That's one of the most beautiful things about having new love in your life, is that it can enliven you, and you can bring that aliveness into your other dynamics. And so what are the ways that you can take that excitement and redirect part of that to your existing and current partners when you're with them? And sharing that vitality in that way.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate when sometimes the partner who's not in the NRE of the triad feels contracted around that, and then the person who's feeling the NRE can't really express that to them, and they don't get the benefit of it.
That's right. That's right. And this is the perfect opportunity for you to start to negotiate and create some agreements around it. So maybe the existing partner doesn't want to feel bombarded with it. So you set specific times and opportunities where your partner can share about their new love interest and why they're excited about it. Or maybe you make certain agreements about having really special dates, and maybe taking a trip together, or really doing something fun and special that you haven't done in a long time, as a way of celebrating your relationship. And that's something that maybe not, you wouldn't have had the incentive to do if your partner wasn't in some kind of new relationship with someone else, right? Those are just a couple quick examples.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Allie. So we're almost out of time, but I just want to thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. I've always really loved your mind and how you talk about things so well. So thank you for being here.
It's been a pleasure to chat with you.
Yeah, and so please tell our participants where they can reach you, and I believe you also have an offer for them.
I do. So my website is www.turnon.love. And you can go there to find out about all the many workshops that I offer. I'll be putting up my workshops online in 2019. So if you're not local to the Bay Area, you can get them that way. I also offer coaching both in person and virtually with individuals and couples. So if you're curious about that, please feel free to reach out. I offer complimentary intake calls to give you a sense of what working together would be like. And then, yes, I have a free gift. So if you go to www.turnon.love/gift, then you're going to get a handout that I use in my Mastering Non-Monogamy course, which is about the art of negotiation. And I walk you through some steps around how to structure a successful negotiation and some important questions that you should be asking yourself in any negotiation process.
Excellent. That's very generous of you. Thank you so much, Allie.
You're very welcome. Yeah.
Yeah, and thanks again for being here, and I wish you all the best in your practice.
Thank you, and thank you so much for running this. It's such an important offering. Thank you.
Okay, great. Talk to you later.